Ilia Topuria is inevitable.
Soy Ilia el matador Topuria.
I feel that no one can match my level of skills inside the octagon. The way I perform, the way I move inside the octagon, they don't see me coming. I know what I'm able to do inside that octagon from my training comes. During the training sessions, during the sparring sessions and all that, I know how good I am. And when I come here and when I talk, they think that I'm cocky, but then they think that I'm crazy. But in reality, I'm not. This is the next level of the game.
Ilia officially made himself the double champ after getting a KO victory over Charles Oliveira at UFC 317. And although a lot of fans think there are guys that could give Ilia problems like Arman Tsarukyan, Paddy Pimblett, or maybe even Islam Makhachev, I'm here to tell you that Ilia Topuria is just inevitable, and at a certain point in all three of those hypothetical matchups, Topuria will find a way to catch his opponents. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm JuicyMMA. I make opinionative MMA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. Also be sure to hit that join button for exclusive channel perks. But anyways, let's get into it. When you look throughout the career of Ilia Topuria, although it has been relatively short, it has at the same time been very, very impressive. As when you look at some of the guys that Topuria was able to beat, he was able to beat Josh Emmett, Bryce Mitchell, Yusuf Zalal, as well as some others. And when you look at his most recent 3-fight win streak, it's probably the best 3-fight win streak in UFC history. Beating Alexander Volkanovski, Max Holloway, and Charles Oliveira back to back to back, all via by KO. And it just seems like whatever legend or whatever fighter the UFC decides to put in front of Ilia Topuria, Ilia will eventually find that right hand and he'll eventually find a KO finish. So after all the wins that Ilia Topuria has been able to get thus far in his UFC career, it seems like next there's a couple of different options for Topuria. Of course, the first and the option that most fans want is Topuria versus Islam Makhachev. But at this point, it doesn't seem like that's all that likely, as Islam is probably going to be fighting JDM for the 170-pound belt, and Ilia Topuria is probably going to need to have at least one title defense if he does so choose to move up to 170 at a later date. So at this point, it seems like there's really three different options for Topuria. He can either fight Justin Gaethje, he can fight Paddy Pimblett, or he can fight Arman Tsarukyan. But in my opinion, none of those guys really deserve a title shot. Arman Tsarukyan just got a title shot not too long ago versus Islam Makhachev and had to pull out last second, according to him due to an injury, or according to Dana White due to Arman missing weight or potentially missing weight. And for Justin Gaethje, he's on a 1-fight win streak versus Rafael Fiziev, and before that he was knocked out cold by Max Holloway. And for Paddy Pimblett, although he is undefeated in the UFC, when you look at the level of wins that he's had under his belt, they're not necessarily title contender worthy. His best win in the UFC is against a 39-year-old Michael Chandler, and at this point Paddy Pimblett is the number 8 ranked guy at the lightweight division. So I don't really think any one of these three guys really deserve a title shot. Now, it just came out at the time of recording this video that the co-main event for UFC 319 is going to be Paddy Pimblett versus Justin Gaethje. And if that were to be the case, I think that makes the most sense. It's a #1 contender fight, and the winner of that would fight Ilia Topuria either later on in the year or early next year. But a question that some of you may be wondering at this point is, why do I think Ilia Topuria is just inevitable? Well, in my opinion, it comes down to a couple different factors, but the first and main factor that I want to touch upon is his striking ability. Because on the feet, a couple of things jump out to you. How technical Topuria is, the power that he has, as well as the speed that he throws his shots with as well. And on the feet, all of his opponents know he wants to land that big right hand. When you look at a lot of his finishes, or essentially all of his finishes, they've all been finished with that right hand. And although all of his opponents know he wants to land that right hand, and although all of his opponents are trying to avoid it, they're just not able to. And the reason for why Topuria is able to land that right hand consistently is due to his setups. When you look at a guy like Alex Pereira in the UFC, he has a very similar thing. Everybody knows Pereira wants to land that left hook, but he's consistently able to land landed on essentially all the opponents he goes up against. And the reason for why Topuria is able to land the right hand, or why Alex is able to land the left hook, is due to their setups. When you look at Topuria specifically, he sets up that right hand with his jabs. His jabs do a couple of different things out there for him. For one, they're power jabs. When Topuria throws a jab, it's a little bit different than a lot of other guys when they throw jabs. When Topuria is throwing a jab, he's utilizing it to hurt his opponents. And I think we saw this specifically in his last fight versus Charles Oliveira, as when Topuria was landing a lot of jabs early, it was really cutting up the face of Charles Oliveira and was really landing damage. But the other thing that Topuria does with his jab is try to blind his opponents and land that right hand. And the last thing that Topuria does with that jab is he utilizes it as a rangefinder. We see this a lot in boxing where guys would throw out a jab consistently just as a rangefinder to set up that right hand or to set up that left hand if they're in southpaw, and Topuria also does this a lot as well in MMA. But besides just his jabs, Topuria also does a great job at throwing leg kicks, pretty hard leg kicks. He also does a great job at putting punches in combinations, going to the body, going to the head, and overall I just think there's so many different weapons for Topuria on the feet to eventually land that big right hand. And that's why a lot of times when he goes up against guys, it just seems inevitable that he's going to find a finish eventually. For a guy like Charles Oliveira, it was going to be earlier because he presses forward. For a guy like Max Holloway, it took a little bit longer, but at the end of the day, the result was the same. Topuria was able to land a big right hand to hurt his opponents, and he was able to find a finish not too long after that. But outside of just his striking game, another reason for why I think Topuria is just inevitable is due to his grappling. Because a lot of people forget this, but when Topuria originally came into the UFC, he was mostly known as a grappler. He was a pretty good wrestler and he had really good jiu-jitsu. Topuria did a great job at taking his opponents down and finding submissions or finding advantageous positions to land ground and pound strikes on his opponents. We saw this a lot in his UFC debut versus Yusuf Zalal. And although at this point Topuria is mostly a boxer out there, the fact that he does have such great grappling is a huge addition to his overall game. Because when you look at his fight against Charles Oliveira, yes, he was able to find a finish in the end on the feet, but there was a point where Charles was shooting for a takedown and Topuria was able to reverse that. If Topuria didn't have great takedown defense, or if Topuria wasn't a great grappler, Charles would have a really big advantage in that position and he probably would be able to take Topuria down and submit him not too long after that. Or even looking into some of the other fights that may be coming for Topuria, an Arman Tsarukyan or maybe even an Islam Makhachev, if Topuria didn't have that grappling to overall round out his game, it would be a huge hole for him, and as good as he is on the feet, it wouldn't matter as much if he didn't have a complete all-around game. So I think the fact that Topuria is not only a very dangerous striker, but he also has a great ability to not only survive on the ground, but even excel is a huge reason for why I think he's just inevitable at the end. And even if his opponents are consistently looking for takedowns, in the end, he's going to be able to stop a lot of those takedowns or get back up or reverse position if he's on the ground. And in the end, there's going to be situations where his opponents are just stuck on the feet against Ilia Topuria. And at this point, it seems pretty clear that that's the last place you want to be against this guy. But I guess we'll see what happens. Who's next for Ilia Topuria? Is it Paddy Pimblett? Is it Justin Gaethje? Or is it even Arman Tsarukyan? And we'll see if down the road we ever get that fight between Islam Makhachev and Ilia Topuria. But I will say whatever does end up happening, I will be looking forward to for sure. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think there's anybody at 155 that could legitimately beat Ilia Topuria, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these two videos popping up now. And until the next time, peace out, guys.